Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be with you, and a very happy Mother's Day to all of our moms, grandmas, and mother figures with us today. It's very good to be with all of you. You know, if you really want to know what somebody believes, don't just listen to what they say, but look at what they do. That what we most truly deep down believe is not best expressed by the words that we say or the words that we profess, but rather in the actions that we take. You know, on this day, Mother's Day especially, my mom never let there be any doubt with her words that she loved us kids. She was the kind of mom who, when dropping us off at middle school through the window, would yell, "I love you," as we had to walk into middle school. And I said, "Quiet, Mom." But it was not just words, because how did I know that my mom really loved me? Not just because she would say it every time we would leave her or every time we would see her in the morning, but because of all of the many ways in which that love became evident through her actions, through what she did. What we most truly believe is not best professed with our words, but rather with what we do. In our gospel today, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Now, it's really important that we keep in mind the right idea that Jesus has for his commandments. That they are not rote rules that we are just meant to obey, but rather they are guides that are to lead us down the path that goes to life and life to the full, like we talked about last week. I've mentioned this before, but G.K. Chesterton said that the more he explored Christianity, while he saw that it had a set rule and order, the chief aim, the chief purpose of that rule and order was to give room for good things to run wild. That God's commandments to us are not meant just to hem us in. They are meant to free us to live life most fully. But these commandments that Jesus gives us, they're able to give evidence to our love for him. That Christ's commandments are the ways in which we are able to show in a very clear way what we might more easily profess with our lips. That it is the love of God that compels us. That it is love for God that is our chief aim in life. That is what we're all about. And so we don't want to think of Christ's commandments as just trying to be restrictive of us, but rather as something that is meant to open us up so that our faith in him might become evident. Maybe another way of putting this is through the question: if you were brought up on charges of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence in your life to convict you? That's a question I ask myself often. How evident in my life is my following of Christ? How tangible do the words that I profess Sunday after Sunday become in the life that I'm actually living? You know, I have either the benefit or the difficulty of walking and driving around town in a black shirt with a white collar. But there are plenty of times when I'm in my car when I want to yank that collar out, right? But for each and every one of us, the call is the same. Is my Christianity remaining just a thing I say in here on Sundays? Or is it becoming incredibly evident out in the real world? Are people able to see me and say they're following the commandments of Christ out of love for Christ? Now, to do this is to live in a very counterculturally sort of way. To seek to follow the path and the way of Christ in our world will often have us walking or trying to walk upstream. It will often have us pitted against the mores and just the ways of the world. It will often find us having to really hang on to our faith in a world that might be going in a very different sort of way. And we have so many examples of people, ancestors in our faith, who have sought to keep the commandments of Christ as evidence of their faith. I just want to introduce you to one of them today. Franz Jägerstätter was an Austrian husband and father. In 1938, in a small village in Austria, Franz was the only no vote against the Anschluss of the Nazis. That was their annexation of Austria. He was the only one to vote in his village against that. He was brought into military service twice, from 1938 until 1943. And both times, luckily, he was able to kind of get out of that service rather quickly. But in 1943, he was once again conscripted to serving in the Nazi army. And when he went there, he made it known that he was not in agreement with what was happening. And he made it known that he was not going to fight. And so he was thrown in a prison. And while in prison, his fellow villagers, his friends, even his own priest, were trying to convince Franz to make the oath of fidelity to the Nazi Party and to Hitler. He had all of this pressure going and pushing him in one direction, but he held steadfast because he was convinced, he believed that his Christianity was preventing him from going that easy path. He was convinced that the commandments of Christ precluded him from giving in to what he saw happening around him. He talks in some of his writings about the dangers of living a half-hearted Christianity. That to live Christianity halfway is a path to just vegetating and not to actually fully living. He had a lot of pressure pushing him in a certain direction, but he had his deep conviction that the commandments of Christ were compelling him to take a stand on something that was not easy for him to do. Well, his imprisonment led one thing to the next, ultimately to his martyrdom. That the Nazis wanted to get rid of him and his standing against them. But in his witness to the faith, we see how evident his Christianity became. How his profession of the faith that he made with his words on Sundays became evidenced in the way that he lived, and even in the way that he died. Now, Franz was far from being the first Christian to ever have to stand up for their faith in a very concrete and evident sort of way. In our second reading today, St. Peter is writing that letter to a group of Christians who are under attack and under persecution for their faith. Their Christianity has not made their lives easier. Their Christianity has not made their lives more comfortable. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's made it a lot more difficult. But to this group of Christians, St. Peter says what? Sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. Double down in your faith. Recognize that through your perseverance, through your giving witness to the faith, God is able to work something much greater. For each and every one of us, we might know well the commandments of Christ. They might at times be sources of contention and friction in our lives. And many of them will at times pit us up against the culture, against the currents out there. You can think about just how hard it can be to keep holy the Sabbath. Now, we're all here on Sunday. But it's travel baseball season. I remember growing up, travel baseball season. How many times I'd have to be late to a game because my dad said we're going to Mass. That's a small way in which we're giving evidence to our conviction. Small way we are giving evidence to our faith in Christ. Other commandments that Jesus gives us. Love one another as I have loved you. Love your enemies. This often goes against what is so easy and so often the case in our culture. But perhaps maybe the most countercultural commandment that we could follow that Christ gives us is actually within the context of our gospel today. When he says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. This on the eve of his death, on the eve of really the worst thing that could happen. He commands his followers to take courage. He commands them to not let their hearts be troubled. He commands them to be not afraid. Brothers and sisters, I think that one of the greatest ways in our world today that we can give evidence to our faith in Christ is by living out those commandments. To be a people of hope, to be a people of strength, to be a people of faith in a world that is increasingly making it more difficult. By finding those small ways each and every day to do that, we are doing our part. We are doing what we can to give evidence to our faith in the Lord.